Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am so thrilled to introduce to you my dear friend and special guest, Jane Deuber, who is a sought-after business strategist, two-time best-selling author, international speaker, and a respected mentor to millions of mission-driven entrepreneurs around the world. And I say millions because they reach through the waves of the internet that you have just touched people in a completely different way. So Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my dear Diane. I'm so excited to be here because I'm a big fan of yours. We're dear, dear friends. And so for us to be able to play in the same space and share something really special with your people, it's exciting.
Well, thank you. So for a lot of you who have done work with me, you may not know that, Jane has been my mentor behind the scenes, that I would not have had my Clutter to Calm Academy, having my, life reset quiz, which a lot of you have taken to really find out where you're at. This is all part of the brainchild that came behind with Jane to really help grow my business and to allow you guys to interface with me. And so you may not know that, over the past 33 years, this is not something Jane started yesterday, right? She's been doing this over 3 decades, that she has started and grown 7 businesses, right? Successful businesses on her own, that she's been able to take all of that of her own businesses to really help entrepreneurs to transform their business experiences to ones that are more profitable, highly leveraged and deeply fulfilling. Mm-hmm. So Jane, I would love for you to talk about what do you see are some of the gaps where people are really excited to start a business, right? And they maybe don't know some of the steps, the behind the scene to really make them profitable, but also to make it where they live a life that they actually love as part of it. It's almost like this love-hate relationship that can happen with entrepreneurs. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that path.
I love that you're starting with this question because in so many ways it's, that first business that Mario and I started was back in 1987. And it was basically $5,000 around the kitchen table, and we took it to multiple millions when we sold that a number of years later. And no one ever pulled me aside, Diane, and ever said, hey, Jane, you get to have this wildly successful business and you get to have a life. And so that first business, I wasn't thinking from the perspective of making sure that I took care of myself just as I took care of bottom line, which is why I adore you. It's why I adore your message, because this is really what you're really teaching. And, if you fast forward after a decade, literally we sold that business because I had run myself into the ground. It was massively successful. We had representation in 30 different states. But as I say, I sold the business and kept the marriage. Now Mario, my husband, Mario, and I, who's helped me start every single one of those businesses, we really did make a conscious effort when we sold that first business, when it had gotten so really out of hand, that every single time we started a business, our relationship came first and our health and wellness came first. And what we realized is it actually enables you to be a better business owner to begin with. So I think, the missing link is that we get so hell-bent on a vision, we want to make it profitable, that we lose ourselves in the process. And I'm here to say that actually the opposite is true. That if you can really begin with the end in mind and have that bigger vision that holds your life sacred, your personal life sacred, in the end, you end up having such greater success than when you run yourself into the ground.
Right. Well, and, I would love for you to share a little bit about that talk that your dad had with you, right? About this job that you created for yourself as opposed to in entrepreneurship, because I believe that was really foundational for you to really see what you were creating so you could make some of these choices with Mario and see, the lifestyle and what that would look like. How did that conversation impact you in business?
Oh my gosh, my dad was the consummate entrepreneur. So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And so, I always had an opportunity to have him kind of take a peek. It was actually a visit. He came out to California. Maria and I we were living in an apartment at the time, just really scrambling. And I remember he scratched his head because he saw I wasn't delegating. I didn't have a plan in place. I didn't have systems in place. And literally he said, sweetie, you don't have a business, you have a job. And I went to graduate school. I have a master's in business, but still there's nothing like being in the trenches. And so it was really, that was the point where we started to go for leverage. And fast forward, what we did do really, really well is I know how to scale a business. I can look at a business model and see where it can be scaled. And so what we did is built a sales force, and built a team and all of those things that you need to have in place. So I think if I were to, what's the advice I would give someone, no matter where they are in the early stages, is really to sit down and make sure that even if right now in the stage you are the primary provider of the service, most people come in as a coach or as a consultant, make sure that you are working towards a model where you can scale and leverage it. I just got off a phone with a new client, and she's been incredibly successful in the executive placement world, where she's, Jeff Bezos' assistant and Warren Buffett's assistant. Like, she works at the very, very high level, and she didn't even see that what I would call the success path. She has a 5-step process that she uses. And so now what we're going to be doing is take that 5-step process as she's perfecting and scaling it for, those packages. We're also going to create a process that then she can then license into these large corporations. So they're using that same 5-step process that she's perfected. So not only, so she has that one-on-one that's happening now, but very quickly she's going to be able to license that. And those are, 50, 100, multiple 6-figure deals when you're taking it into companies like Google and Apple. So it's always making sure that you're looking down the road about where it is that you can scale, because that's how you have the spa life, right?
Right.
When the revenue is coming in. And it's kind of what we did also with your program. You took your clutter to calm, and you were doing this mostly one-on-one, and now you're able to impact people who, get your process and they get your energy, but you're able to still scale.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is one of the things I love about the perspective that you have. You're always a big vision thinker, but you always have practical ways to do it and to really pull out, we all have these systems of how we do our work in the world and what it looks like, but to really cultivate those things together really makes a huge difference. And you are such a great example of building not only team, but just great team, like team that is really enrolled into your vision, that it becomes their vision. And I know some of the things that people are challenged with is their team, and to find that good team that looks like. And, the two companies that you particularly have, put the energy into with Global Experts Accelerator and Smart Biz Quiz, those two in particular. But, your team has really, just accelerated the ability for people to, not only track and engage and enroll new people in, but to be that example on the back end is too of what that looks like. I find that that's something that people really, one, not having their system in place, and two, not having the team. So how is it that in the beginning you come from a scaling mindset?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So I would say, well, first of all, what you did say was actually pretty funny. So when I'm talking to a person, a potential client, one of the things we like to do is just, I like to ask, what's the magic wand wish? Like, where could you go with this? And I find that a lot of people they can't think beyond a model that's small or familiar to them, right? So that conversation with Kathy, where now we're looking at a licensed program into corporations, she couldn't even see it. And I think the mistake that people make is not giving themselves the gift of having someone else's brain on their business.
Yeah.
Not having someone else's perspective, because we can only see what we already know. And so I think with team, I will say on the team side of it, I have I think I told you one of our services is called a turnkey CEO package, right? So that client, we've already hired 3 people for them. All of them, I know they're going to be in it for the long haul. They've already had to go through some challenging times, and they stayed there. We're hiring a 3rd person this week. And I think it's because we're so clear about what is the need. So what does that individual need to be delegating? What's the process that they're stepping into? What's the actual definition of that role? And we have a really kick-ass onboarding process. And that means, those first few weeks of that new team member on board, you'll know in those first few weeks if they're able to hang with the culture, are they aligned in their values? And so for me, I think a lot of times what happens is they'll bring on a team member, they'll kind of identify what the roles and responsibilities are, and then they cross their fingers and they don't delegate, they relegate, right? They just throw everything off on the other person's plate. and really, we found it takes a good 4 to 6 weeks for people. We don't even start to measure or start to, it's really just 4 to 6 weeks of really getting people acclimated, giving them small responsibilities and see how they show up, giving them challenges. And I think, if you look at a business, you need the strategy and the business model that can scale. And then you need the team to help you do that so that you're, once again, not 100% responsible for everything.
Right. Well, and I think too, by the time someone actually gets team, usually they're in a crisis point where they actually, need someone like right away. So there may be compromising what they need in their culture or what they're looking for in that person. And I could see where they're like, okay, it's off my plate, right? So it's like, they're not looking at that longer picture. So I appreciate just that perspective of that onboarding and being clear about having the right person, right, in place for that, and to, be able to make that happen. So that's,
and investing the time, investing the time. We're all in such a hurry. We don't realize like how that person is treated and guided in those first few weeks is just so essential. So yeah, that's important.
Right. So how much would you say of your just core personality of who you are has really come into play in driving your businesses? I mean, you are a true adventurer. I mean, you're somebody who has, you went to school in Vienna, you lived in Japan. I mean, you've been into over 24 countries. I mean, you've been around the world. You've had an imprint of how things are done in other cultures. How do you feel like that impacts not only your own life, but how that really impacts your business?
That's such a great question. You did your homework, girlfriend. I'm impressed. So yeah, here's what I think, the adventures, like I've always wanted a life outside the box. Right now I get to live in Pebble Beach and build our businesses from home with my husband. So that's been really fun. But, and I am married an Ecuadorian, so there's outside the box right there for you. But here's what I will say. I would say that to really, truly have a business that's scalable, you have to have a certain comfort level with risk, right? Yeah. And I think, when I look back at my life and how growing up with my father, he rewarded risk. I mean, that's how you got the goodies from him, was when he saw you going out and taking risks and being courageous. That's what he loved to see. And so that was probably instilled in me really early on that, there is a reward to taking risks, right? So I think that's one. And so, really having a person look at their capacity for risk. And, I think part of that comes out of just a sense of self-esteem, because I've failed so many times, Diane. I can't tell you how many times I've failed. And I'm able to take those risks and be okay with failure because I know that I'm going to be fine. I know that at the core, I am still me. I'm resilient. I will find a way. And oftentimes what we say, we say we've had 7 businesses, right? So 7 startups, 7 successful. We sold a number of them and still have some today. But I will say it's not really the same business I started. We just sort of redesigned it, reimagined it. I use the phrase of reframing. We reframed the business. So if one thing isn't working, it's still the basic business concept, but you got to tweak this and tweak that. And it sometimes is risky, but hey, you know what? It's part of business. And the more comfortable you are with risks, I'm gonna say that the greater the likelihood of you being successful.
Right.
Yeah.
And, maybe risk comes, maybe this is part of the answer, what I'm leaning towards here, but, what do you feel is what holds people back from their dream business? Because people talk all the time that they want these things, right? But, it seems that more times than not, there are things that hold people back from it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think if I were to boil it down, it's 2 categories: fear of success and fear of failure. Right. And most people don't think about the first one. But just in my conversation just now, for me to say, hey, what if we did this? What if we really streamlined your process so we can increase the number of clients that you can serve, so your time, investment is less? And then what if we took that process into corporate? It was like, initially she was like, what? Like that was a way outside of her comfort zone. And so I saw her kind of go through that process. But what I was able to say is, the worst case scenario, we have a really streamlined process and we increase your capacity. And if you decide that you don't want to take it in, so I guess having a safety net, knowing that you're always in control, knowing you can always change a decision, those are important things. And of course, obviously aligning yourself with someone else who's done something like that before, those are all things that can mitigate that fear of like, wow, if that really takes off, can I handle that size of a business? It would easily be, 7-figure business plus. And so the other thing I said to her, which when I saw her kind of like didn't backpedal, but it felt big to her, is that all of this happens gradually. You can start with a great big business vision, which I always like to do that. One of the games we play is how quickly can we get to the million mark, right? That's a fun game. But know that it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time to build these kinds of businesses. And so you grow as a CEO, you grow as a business owner in that process. And so I remember, Diane, I kid you not, I remember going on a walk, and this was back in 1988. We had about a year into the business. And I remember we used to do these called vision walks, where if we were ever get bored or overwhelmed or scared or whatever, we would go on a walk together, and Mario and I would talk about the bigger vision that we were moving towards, this multi-million-dollar business. And I remember saying to him, and my husband Mario, and you can imagine, because we're wired very differently. And I remember saying to him, I've got to grow to fill the shoes that I want to wear. And so I'm going to go on this massive personal growth journey, because I'm not a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company right now. And he was actually, so he came in from waiting tables. I mean, he had never been in operations or run the finances of a multi-million-dollar company. And so what I talked about is growing to fill the shoes that I wanted to wear. And that's, it's what happens for all of you. It doesn't happen overnight, and you really can, gain the skills, gain the mindset, gain the capacity over time. It's
right. Yeah, I love that so much. You're such a great example of creating, like, in the environment, right? The environment that you want to step into. I mean, your beautiful home that you're in. I mean, you're so close to nature, and you get out into that and really have those experiences around it. I know that your morning practices, your rituals, so really allow you to kind of hold that space as well to grow into that. Can you talk a little bit about your morning rituals and how that just allows you to help continue to grow into that vision?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I would say I'm super consistent, but we all have our practices, and then sometimes we let go of them. And it's so interesting, Diane. I can literally track my level of joy, my level of success. I can literally track it to how sacred I keep my morning practice. Like when we're in the middle of a launch, sometimes what'll happen, is I'll have my East Coast team need something early on. And if I miss that morning practice, it's a little bit different for me throughout the day. I'm not as grounded. I'm not as clear. I'm not as productive. So basically what my morning practice, I'm a real early riser. 5:30 is typically when I start, and I try and spend at least an hour. And I know some people say, they don't have that time, but start with whatever you can. But literally, I start with just reflection. And I do something called Dialogue with Source. I think you do the same, where I journal. Yes. It's Active Imagination by Tim Kelly is the person I learned it from. But I pose a question, or I'll just ask, what am I needing for today for me to serve at the highest level? And I actually journal, and I journal in a dialogue form. So I'll say Jane, and then I ask the question to Source or God, whatever word you want to use. And then I write Source : or God : and I write whatever comes up. And it's remarkable. It's just remarkable, because what we need to know for us to live the life that we're here to live, it's there. It's within our grasp, but we either don't trust that it's there, or we don't take time to find out what's there. And so that's the beginning of the morning practice. I do, and I'm sure I call it meditation, but mindfulness. And then usually try to have some kind of really yummy, whether I'm reading from a book that I'm reading or some sort of input. So I found that I put my journaling prior to the input, and it seems more pure and more clean and more clear. I'm not influenced by something that I've read, but that's like a 3-step sort of process for my morning practice.
Right. Well, and I love this so much because it's so important, this, kind of coming back to who we are, right? To really, if we're not grounded in that and coming from that place to make the decisions, there is more flow in the day, there is more productivity. And, there's just something about coming back to that. And, I've gotten to a place where I'm, much more consistent with that myself. And I do notice days that I don't do that, really. And I think sometimes some fears actually come up around that, because sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know if whatever is being revealed to me, am I going to step into that, like that bigger shoes, or that, I actually need to take a step back. And that is actually some of the message I had received, was to take a step back and actually come into more of a place of silence. That was almost more scary to me than actually doing, right? Because I know I got that part down. But to really listen to that, and you and I have had some pretty deep conversations around different times of our life where we lose part of ourselves, of like what that looks like. And, I share a lot with our listeners around times that we feel disempowered. And that is part of the journey in order to get to a place where we can feel empowered. And I'd love for you to share about that, about times that you have felt that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about what I wanted to share, and I'm all about, for those of you who've been in my community ever, I mean, I'm all about authenticity and transparency. And I'll just say, just recently, we had a really interesting experience. We did, for some of you might be familiar with what Jeff Walker calls a product launch formula, a basic launch. The intention was to launch a program called the Sales Acceleration Mastery. And we did all the videos, we went out to the list, we did all the bells and whistles. And when it came time for us to actually have the conversations, do the launch, in my morning practice, I knew something was off, right? I knew there was something almost that I really couldn't place my finger on, but I knew that from the conversations my team was having, from the dialogue back and forth, a part of me felt like, I'm not so sure this is the thing that I should be birthing right now. Right? Imagine that conversation.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure that any of our listeners who are business people, they're like, oh my God, I did all the things, right? And so is that fear, or is it out of alignment? So it's like, what do you do when all that, because you're going forward and then.
Right. And here's the beauty of this, through the process. So in the end, we did not end up making the offer that we intended for the whole launch. But in the end, I got so clear about really what I'm being called to do rather than that thing. And had I gone ahead and done it, what we're going to do is move into the certification realm. And it's so funny. I sat there, Diane, I was looking at the evidence, right? Okay, here's where we are in the launch. Here's some of the conversations that we've had. All the while, I've got people knocking on my door asking if they can jump on a call with me to talk about certification, right?
No coincidence.
Oh, I know, no coincidence. And so I was like, well, yeah, I got to I have to finish this launch, and then we'll jump on a call. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, it was like, that's just God's way of saying, Jane, go over here, over here. And so what's, I thought about writing a blog on it, but I haven't. But the whole concept of reframing what somebody else might see as failure, right? Yes. And it wasn't. So we ended up finding people, they all wanted the done for you. What we learned is they all wanted the done for you. So we were building out these sales acceleration systems for people. So we found some fantastic clients that I love who just said, Jane, can you just build it for us? Like, I don't want to do it. And so we also found, I think, a certification client out of that whole process. So yes, a lot of work, not the outcome that I was expecting, but it's the outcome that was meant for me. And I think I want everybody to hear that. When you can, when you gain that kind of insight, when you get that kind of nudge from the universe, in the form of what others might consider to be a failure, I think that's another, trait. It's not just the risk taking, but it's my ability, my capacity for initial disappointment and then reframing that to be like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect next step for us as a company. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important for entrepreneurs to really be in that place and in that conversation, because, if you get stuck in the quote, failure, like, oh, we didn't go forward with this. This is what we thought we were going to do. And you just go through the rote, this is the path, knowing that something is not right. You could be years out of the loop of where you're going because it wasn't in alignment for you.
Exactly.
So to take those times and to actually listen to those pivots, right, where there is no such thing as that failure, right? There's the feedback, there's the what's next. It's like, where am I being led to? And give yourself the space to take a breath.
You did that, Diane, and I was blessed to be able to be in that space with you.
Yes.
And it really was you moving towards that thing that you're feeling called to do. It was the tweaking of your existing business model so you would leave space for that. And you're such a great example. I mean, I look up to you in so many ways. You're a mentor of mine in the lifestyle piece, because you, whether it's your health and wellness, whether it's your relationships, it's whether the amount of balance you have in your life. I mean, you are the consummate example in my life of that. And I'm forever grateful for that.
Oh, thank you. And again, it's like, there's the behind the scenes parts that people don't see, right? That isn't something that happened overnight. It became this exploration of being willing to have deeper conversations in my relationships, to really ask those questions, whether it was in the conversations with God or source about, where am I to go? And, Jane, you were one of the first people that had said, because I at times would go into this place of where I had lack of clarity, or I was in confusion. And you're like, you know what, that's actually a form of fear, right? And I will forever have that pivot change, is that I'm never in a place now of confusion. It may feel like that, but that is just a knocking to be able to ask deeper questions, right? And so the clarity is always right behind the confusion if you allow it and you ask better questions. So yeah. I love just kind of that synergy that you and I have with this of, mentor and friend and moving through the different stages. And I think it's important for, our listeners to see that, there is so much behind the scenes, and why it is so important to have, mentors and people. When you see an aspect of somebody's life that speaks to you, that is a nudge for you to have a conversation with them, because there's something to be learned there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think so many times we just try and go it alone, and it's hard because, there's so many things that come through our head. One of the things that I know came up for my team when I made the decision to shift the offer. They're like, well, what are people going to think? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't know. It's coming to that place of trusting yourself. Right. And I couldn't have gotten there had I not had some people who know and trust me that I could turn to and be like, you're not going to believe what's just happened. And here's what I'm thinking. I had a sounding board of someone that I could go to, and it helps dial down the crazy, right? That kind of goes on in our head, and just really coming to a place of trust. Like, okay, no, I really do. I have this. And I know that I'm guided, and I know that I can trust that this is really the next place we should be going. So yeah, I hope everybody recognizes that, we all have those, like, what would everybody think? We all have the things of, who am I to do this? I mean, all that, like, for me to take on certification, we've been doing it for years. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me that really should be the thing that we undertake next. Right. And so I think it was like, well, who am I to do the certification? Well, I'm probably one of the most qualified out there doing it, but I was coming from a different perspective where I don't know what I thought I needed, but yeah. So I think everybody just come from that place of, if you've been given that vision, for most of you, you have the capacity to bring it to fruition. You just need a little support along the way.
Right, right. Well, and anyone that's been, in the entrepreneurial game, if you will, going through whether it's, a few years or even decades, there's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of shifts and things that can happen along that journey. And sometimes people can get to a place where they can even feel defeated, where they may think about quitting, or they're not sure, is it time for a pivot, or what to do differently. When people are confronted with some of those roadblocks that can, that does happen, it's just a matter of when in the business, how can they get their business mojo back?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer of vision. Diane, we have a document, we call it the Quick Start Guide to Your Best Year Yet. And the first step really begins with vision. And so oftentimes when I see a person sort of wavering in their commitment or their confidence level, a lot of times it's just because they've kind of lost connection to the vision, or the vision has shifted a little bit and they've not given themselves time to go back and clarify what the vision is now, right? So that's exactly what I did. So literally when we made this decision, I literally blocked off, I cleared my calendar for an entire afternoon. So this was Wednesday. Then, Thursday morning, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that this isn't the place we're supposed to go. And so I cleared the entire deck of my day. And I spent that afternoon imagining, what does this vision look like? And I tell you, by Friday morning, when I had a call with my coach, it was like I could barely remember where I was in that place of, that Wednesday. It was a harder time for me. But I had to sort of recapture, because I'd already, leaned into the process of visioning, leaned into the process of, why is this uniquely aligned with my values and my vision and my purpose? So I'd already walked myself through that process to the point where I couldn't even recreate the sadness or the confusion that I was feeling, because I would take in the steps of getting clear about vision, aligning with my values, seeing as how it's a part of my purpose.
Right. Well, this is such a key insight, because I think a lot of times people think of a vision as a static thing, right? It's like, I have to go towards this. And so I think sometimes the roadblocks feel even more challenging, because they feel like there's no other way to go. Right. So giving yourself that time to be like, okay, yes, this was the starting vision, if you will. But there may be some adjustments where the vision, now you've taken a step and something else has now been revealed to you. So now you can make an adjustment to the newer vision. And I get that when you're in alignment with it, you forget what the other part was, because now you've kind of re-engaged yourself to move forward with that, and just giving people permission to be able to adjust that vision is key.
Yeah, I think there's a correlation here too, Diane, with a plan. A lot of people avoid having a quote unquote plan to grow the business. And so there's kind of maybe a little more flying by the seat of their pants, but I'll say the same thing about vision as I say about plan. The only reason you have a plan is so that when things change, you make better decisions on how the plan changes. Like, things will always change. And oftentimes I hear people say, well, I don't want to do a plan because I know it's going to change. But having the plan helps us be more mindful and conscious and wise when we are making those shifts in how we're going to get from A to Z. So it's just like a vision. You actually want it to continually change, because you're changing. My gosh, we're evolving at the speed of light. We've got so much information coming at us that we have to be continually evolving the vision to keep it juicy and fun and appropriate for what it is we want to accomplish.
Right, right. Well, I love this because, I'm such a believer in just consciously creating your experience and what that looks like. And, one of the things I love asking my guests on the show is to really look at their environments, because they are impactful, and you are so intentional about your environments. I'm so curious how you're going to answer this, because we have a different experience in your office versus your bedroom or your kitchen. What is your favorite room in your home, and why?
Oh, I love my house.
I love your house too.
So I would say I do love my office. It's got a bay window. I'm super minimalist. We have no paperless company.
It's
We're running two companies from a laptop, and my husband does the same. I think it's because the magic that happens here when I'm connecting with clients, it's such sacred work for me to have the opportunity and the privilege of being able to help a person craft a new vision, decide how they're going to get there, and then take the steps to get there. It's really sacred work to me. So that's where the magic happens in this room. I also have like 2 other stations around the house because I like to be able to stand for part of the day and such. But really, I think my consulting sessions are here in this space. I would say that's my favorite. It also has I would say just a few of my favorite books. I don't keep all of them. They're just the ones that are sacred to me. And I have one shelf for personal and one shelf for business, and that's it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and just where that room is particularly situated, you get in like a lot of light, and I could see how that would have you thrive. And so I love just the environments that people create, and you just have such a beautiful, welcoming space. And I love being in it.
Oh, it's always fun to have you and Carrie here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you, and you also have a special gift for them. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah. So I'm just also, I don't often do this, but I love your people. So if they just want to connect with me directly, I'll just give them my email. It's Jane, Janed. So Jane D at globalexpertsaccelerator.com. So maybe we'll put that link somewhere where you've got it. And then what I wanted to do, one of the things we talked about today is just making sure that you're looking at your business through the lens of future possibility. And so one of my favorite things to do as a free gift is to give them the gift of the assessment. So they know your assessment. So we helped you build that. So it's similar to that, but what we're looking at is we're looking at your business through the lens of what are the different ways that you can really have a scalable, leverageable business. So it's simple, maybe 4 minutes to take. You get a really cool free gift. Depending on where you are in your business, we give you a next step free gift that's appropriate. So if you're beginner versus advanced, you'll get a specially selected special gift. And it'll give you, in my opinion, it's the gift of awareness, because it's the missing pieces in your business that are holding you back. It's the missing pieces, the things that you haven't taken time to address, that if you address them, can exponentially grow your business. And so it's just an opportunity for you to be able to take a look and see where those missing pieces might be.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you guys, this is very generous for you to have a private conversation with Jane. Is like with her schedule and things the way they are, that is gold right there. So thank you very much for opening that up for people as well. And you definitely want to take the quiz and have those that awareness around it. And we'll have all the links in the show, so you guys will be able to get all of that as well. So my friend, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, first, thank you. I love these conversations, and thank you for the work that you do. I think as people are kind of moving into the week where you are in your work week, I really want you to step into you trusting yourself and knowing that you're being led to create something that is really life-changing for others. And trust yourself, know that you can grow into that vision that you have for yourself, and know that people like Diane and I are here to support you in doing that in an accelerated way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and for being here. And, to our listeners, I so respect that you are here with us. We know that time is such a precious resource, and we so appreciate you spending some time here with us today. We would love whatever platform that you're on to put in any comments, something that you learned, an aha, any questions, and make sure that you tag both Jane and myself. So we're happy to support you and wherever you are in your life or business. And, it's these kind of conversations that allow us to get the word out. So please subscribe so you get the latest episodes. And it does make a difference when you rate and review the show, because you get to have an input of what you want to hear more of. And these are the kind of positive conversations that we want to have in the world and want you to be part of that community. So thank you for that. And make sure you get out and do that today. And until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.